Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is the 25th of February 2025. These are the stories that we'll try to decipher during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with Pakistan's war against terrorism. If you look at the trajectory of what is happening in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or Balochistan, you see a spate of incidents that have been happening. But of course, they are effectively thwarted by our defense forces, our security forces, without which I don't know where we would have been. Nevertheless, the fact is that there is a certain increase as far as the number of such incidents across the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan is concerned. The reasons behind it are more or less clear because of the fitna, because of the influence of BLA and the nexus between these two, and the influence of other regional actors that are trying to destabilize Pakistan one way or the other. But of course, the resolve of our armed forces of our nation remains strong, remains committed as far as eliminating all such designs is concerned. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the day 1097 of the Ukraine-Russia war. More than 3 years have passed. In fact, yesterday was the third anniversary of this conflict that began between Ukraine and Russia. It all began around the fact that Ukraine wanted to be part of NATO. Will the dreams of NATO to become Ukraine to become part of NATO come to fruition? Well, of course, as far as United Nations is concerned, there has been some kind of a mixed bag as far as the decisions that have been accepted is concerned. One at the United Nations Security Council, which was in favor of the United States and Russia, that together voted in favor of the resolution passed by the US, presented by the US, and the second in the United Nations General Assembly, where the US vetoed in fact one such resolution that was okayed by 93 and thus accepted in the United Nations General Assembly. But what kind of an effect are such resolutions going to have in the long run? Is the are the talks between the US and Russia going to bear some kind of a positive result? With the European Union and Ukraine be the other side in this factor, or will there be some kind of a consensus in the long run? This is going to be discussed in our second segment. Then we are going to discuss gold, that is a gold toilet, rather not even gold, a gold toilet that is worth 4.8 million pounds that was stolen within 5 minutes in 2019, and the case is still in the court. There are 4 people who have been arrested. One has admitted to it, the 3 others are not admitting to it, but there is no trace of that gold toilet. Apparently what is being said is that the gold toilet was broken into small pieces and those pieces were then sold. Finally, we are going to talk about musicians who have released a silent album to protest the United Kingdom's AI copyright changes. Now, the United Kingdom wants to make certain changes as far as the copyright infringement laws is concerned, and they want to include AI in such a manner that the original artists will no longer have the right or the control that they used to have on their music, and that is what a lot of musicians, around 1,000 musicians, did. They they protested against that in a silent protest. We'll be highlighting that as part of our last story. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns Pakistan's war against terrorism. We've been joined by 2 guests to discuss more on that. In the studios, we've been joined by Hazrat Bilal. He's a project coordinator with the Pakistan Institute of Peace Studies, otherwise known as PIPS. Thank you very much, Bilal, to have joined us. And in this online, we've been joined by a very dear guest, Major General retired Zahid Mehmood Sahab, who's a defense analyst. Sir, thank you very much to have joined us. It's always a pleasure to have you in our show. We'll begin with you, Hazrat Bilal. Security forces killed 10 terrorists in an IBO in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's Khyber district. This happened yesterday. Then if we go a little back, every day there seems to be some kind of an incident either in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or in Balochistan. Either the terrorists are killed or some of our forces are martyred. This is a spate of such incidents that has been going on for quite some time. But we see that many of such incidents have been effectively thwarted by our defense forces, by our security forces. How effective do you see this determination of our security forces to wipe out this menace of terrorism from the country? Of course, I'm also adding our administration, our government.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this program. As far as the operation goes, they do have an impact on the security situation, but the security situation is worsening day by day, and we are not seeing a good result of that. And it's not because that the security forces are not doing things or the things they are doing are not enough. But the question is that the thing is that the current security situation in this country is quite different from the last time. In our own report, we have stated that in 2014 that the incident in 2024 is a mirror of 2014, but that's far away from the truth, because as far as the security situation goes, the terrorists, they have changed their tactics a lot. Previously, they have targeted many civilians. Now, this time, they're not targeting civilians. If you ask any person on the areas going, so they, to the most point, they don't even know that the situation is so worse. So, because of that, it is going and adding more and more. And of course, Afghanistan is also contributing to that. They have a hideout there. So that's also contributing to all of the security situation going on and on. And for me, if you ask me, what is the result? Is it going any better or worse? It is going better.
But when you do your research at PIPS, what do you find? What are the basic causes? Where are the basic areas? What are the basic methodologies of such attacks?
Look, when we see our data and we are mapping the incident, it's a worrisome thing when you see the map. This year when we were preparing our maps for the security report, so we saw that whole of the area of KP and Balochistan, not a single or two district you might see that are not affected by any kind of terrorism. The rest of the areas you see, each and every area there is an incident or two of terrorism, but there is a lot of incident adding up to that.
General Saab, let's begin with the whole crux of the issue. What does the fitna stand to gain? What do the BLA stand to gain from these spate of incidents that have been affecting Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa since the last couple of months?
But thank you very much once again for having me. I think this is the whole spectrum of this application against Pakistan, the application of hybrid war, application of the proxy war, application of state-sponsored terrorism, and collaboration of these clients with their sponsor, that is India, and the use of the Afghan soil, the way they are doing. The whole spectrum of this threat has to be understood. Look, today Pakistan is a victim of a hybrid war. Pakistan is a victim of fifth generation war. So this is, as Bilal was saying about AI and social media, this is one aspect. But once we see once we analyze the whole spectrum of the war, so there is a lot many things which have to be done. He's spoken about the trust between the people and the armed forces, or the trust between the people and the government. That is not there. This is one part. So this is one of the objectives of the enemy, to create a trust deficit and to create a chaos in the minds of the people of Pakistan that, look, our security forces, our government is unable to protect us, and probably they won't be able to carve the strategy to eliminate this menace. So this is one of the objective of the enemy. So we need to guard it very, very carefully. Even once we are speaking about such effects, we should not mix all the areas, all the people. We should not put everyone in the same basket. Unfortunately, the pulse on the ground is very less with the people of Pakistan. So why? Because there's no access to those areas, much access to those areas. Of course, these areas are open. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Today, Pakistan government and the armed forces of Pakistan they are enjoying the writ. They've already, writ is established. There are no areas in Pakistan, not even a single inch, where we cannot go and operate. Alhamdulillah, the writ is there. But unfortunately, this effect of the social media is extremely negative. So the government has to be very, very careful about this, and the true information and the true representation of that area are the
Chief of the Army Staff and our DG ISPR has called many a times digital terrorism. This is also something that needs to be catered to in an effective manner. There are a lot of reports that have come as far as the casualties and the areas that have been affected by terrorism in Pakistan is concerned. One by, of course, PIPS, whose representative is right here, who says in 2024 the number of terror attacks reached levels that were comparable to what was happening in 2014. But they also say that the highest number of incidents happened in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Then we've got the ISPR Director General who says that that a total of 59,775 incidents happened last year, in which 925 terrorists were killed, 383 officers and soldiers were martyred. Then there are different reports, whether it be CISR or other such think tanks that give different details of the number of casualties, but also how many people have been affected. But of course, the whole crux of it is in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. BLA fitna nexus, we've discussed that with you in the past as well, General Saab. But do you feel this is a nexus that is getting stronger? Is there any way to, create fissures in such a nexus and move towards not only creating divisions, but also capturing all the heads of such organizations that are either operating from Pakistani soil or from across the border?
Omar, time and again, the state has been offering them to get back to the state and throw your arms, and society is all good to have you again in their own folds, But as I said earlier, that we are being victimized, we are the victims of a proxy war and state-sponsored terrorism. So a lot of economics is attached to this terrorism. This fitna al-Khawarij, we have to work in all the fields. You can't stop the kinetic, If they're going to hit you, you have to hit them back very hard to create an environment of negotiation and talking to these people. These are the people who are playing in the hands of our enemies. So again, the southern, the western borders, we are talking about Balochistan and KPK. These are the target because, they're targeting the people of these two provinces also, that look, this fitna is already there and your state is unable to, defend you people. So that is the confidence they want, that people should lose confidence in the state and hope in the state. So this is the objective. That's why I say that the government, the responsibility, especially of the provincial government, even of the district governments, provincial governments, and federal governments, the whole of the nation approach has to be applied. But the responsibility of the provincial government is too much. They are supposed to be very, very careful, especially in the psychological domain, that the people don't lose confidence in their armed forces. Every day you hear that a lot of intelligence-based operations are being carried out. A lot of terrorists are being taken out. Lot of, but the mindset, the application against the mindset to change the mindset of the people. Then there is socio-economic prong that is little weak and little missing. So we have to go in a big way. A lot of media, we see our media, unfortunately, that our mainstream media has already lost the credibility. They're not talking about these people. They're not showing the true patriots of these areas, especially Balochis and Pakhtuns, who have total faith in Pakistan, and they exactly know that without Pakistan they are nothing. But they are not being brought forward. So elders of those areas.
I'd like to add a little thing, and I'd like a short answer before I go to my guest who's also waiting in the studios. The Balochistan government spokesperson took out a media briefing. Spoke to the media today in the afternoon, and he talked about narrative building. He talked about narrative building from a certain political party that was putting not only the government but the whole situation in Balochistan in a very negative light. Don't you feel that this narrative building, quote unquote, is also contributing to destabilization in Pakistan?
Of course, it is. Once your priorities are your own politics and your priorities are your party and your own coming into power, so you are doing everything to grab the power. But the responsibility as a citizen of Pakistan and responsibility of every individual, once they make the contract with the state through the constitution, that is missing. That is exactly my point. That sometimes we see that individuals, the parties, they become larger than the state. That is not acceptable. So, but it is prime responsibility of the government and then the people of those areas. So they have to come forward to counter that negative narrative. So we must understand, Omar, that the narrative of Pakistan, the narrative of Islam is much larger than these small narratives. But unfortunately, once there is, the missing pieces are there, once we get dormant with these things and we just start ignoring and we start thinking that this is the only responsibility of few maybe institutions or few individuals, and then rest nobody is responsible for this. Because in hybrid warfare, every individual of this country is the target. and every individual of this country.
I agree with you on that. I'll go to my guest in the studios, Hazrat Bilal. Pakistan has recently unveiled a new policy to tackle violent extremism using a bouquet of tools like school curriculum changes, religion, social media outreach. You talked about social media, that's why I'm coming towards this. In addition to military tactics. This new policy, the National Prevention of Violent Extremism policy, came out in January, but it has been made public very, very recently. Now, this new policy promotes a whole of society strategy and a 5R approach: revisit, reach out, reduce, reinforce, and reintegrate. It is, of course, a huge document. How do you view this policy and its implementation?
Look, we have a lot of policies, and we have things that are on documents, many things like before this we had, after 2016 we had National Action Plan. The problem in this country for many things, including the security and this, is not policies in itself, it's the implementation of it. How serious are you for implementing those policies? For example, like General Saab said, that look at the politics, the politicians, they forget what they are for. So it's an easy thing to put the whole blame on one segment of the people.
Easy.
It's really very easy. So each and everyone is a part of it.
General Saab, coming to you, I'd like to understand, we were just talking about this National Prevention of Violent Extremism policy that has come out in January by NACTA, and of course it seems to be a very interesting new aspect on how to take things forward as far as ridding the country of extremism and terrorism is concerned. What kind of kinetic and non-kinetic measures, in your point of view, sir, with your huge experience, need to be implemented in letter and spirit in order to completely make Pakistan a safe haven?
Well, Omar, just a quick remark on Bilal, what Bilal was saying. I think India and Afghanistan are the only country about which we have a serious proof which we have given to the international community, and Mr. Kulbhushan is a living example of the involvement. Then the Indians already claim that. I exactly understand what he's hinting at, that the masses are not taking this. But these are the facts, unfortunately. That's why I was saying that the narrative for our own people was not, it's not being built properly. Then we are victim of bad governance, you know. And now I just give you one example. There are more than 83,000 levies and, constabulary, frontier constabulary guys, 83,000 people are there in these armed forces. Other day, the bus which was ambushed, that was ambushed between, the distance between two posts were around 500 meters, and that's all. Nobody came out because of the bad governance and poor governance, bad administration. 60% are, missing from these. These are the fake, either enrolled people or they're not working there. So these are the things which government has to take care of. The military and the the armed forces of Pakistan and the security forces of Pakistan, they are clearing the areas. Once it comes to holding, it is also done. But once it comes to the rebuild, a socio-economic prong, that is the missing part. So those are the things which we have to, undertake. Then we must understand that it is not only now of course, there are people who are supporters, abettors in Pakistan. There are breeding grounds in Pakistan from where they are recruiting this, and they are working on Pakistan. But unfortunately, this unstable Afghanistan. So that is a big cause of this. They have pushed all the foot soldiers now towards Pakistan. They are keeping the mid-tier and upper-tier leadership with them, and they have pushed these soldiers because now there's less money is coming to them from America now, and they'll be facing a lot of shortage of dollars in future also. So they'll be totally banking on this $7 billion ammunition, which was unfortunately left by the NATO because of their ill-planned and uncomprehensive withdrawal.
Against Pakistan, and we have seen proofs of that. General Sahab, I'm really sorry we have to cut you short, but thank you very much to have joined us and to have given us your eminent point of view and opinion as far as terrorism in Pakistan, Pakistan's war against terrorism is concerned, and how we need to continue to move forward in order to completely eliminate all such elements from our soil. Major General retired Zahid Mehmood Sahab, defense analyst, and in the studios, Hazrat Bilal, project coordinator, Pakistan Institute for Peace Studies. Thank you very much to the both of you to have joined joined us, to have given us your valid and valuable opinion as far as this menace of terrorism is concerned. Thank you very much. I hope to see you soon, very, very soon on to discuss more on this very topic. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and this concerns the 3 years plus of the war between, or the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Today is day 1097 of that very conflict. Russia welcomes the US's balanced position after Washington voted with Moscow at the United Nations General Assembly to avoid condemnation of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Nevertheless, the resolution that was backed by Ukraine was passed in the United Nations General Assembly, but not in the United Nations Security Council, where this council has backed a US government resolution calling for an end to the war in Ukraine without mentioning Russia as the aggressor. French President Emmanuel Macron has also met the US President Donald Trump and has warned that peace cannot mean the surrender of Ukraine, but says talks with the US President have shown a path forward despite the fears of a transatlantic rift. A lot of European countries are very skeptic as to what is going to happen with all the statements that have recently been made by Donald Trump. We've been joined by two guests to discuss more on that. In the studios, we've been joined by Nasir Ali Khan Saab. He's a former ambassador at large. Nasir Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. It's a pleasure to have you here. And in the studio online, we also have been joined by Shazia Anwer Cheema. She's a foreign affairs analyst. Shazia, thank you very much to have joined us as well. We'll begin with you, sir. Ukrainians, I mean, let's talk about the whole violence aspect or the fighting aspect of it all. Ukrainians continue to resist the onslaught of the Russian army, but of course this now conflict has entered a very strange new phase where neither side knows where things are going to move forward. Nevertheless, there's a lot of aggression as per the Ukrainian side. From the Russian side, there are a lot of drone attacks. A couple of days there was one of the biggest drone attacks that happened from the Russian side, and this drone attacks continue to happen. Ukraine also does that, but not to the same level. At the same time, there is all this talk of some kind of a settlement, of a ceasefire agreement that the US is forcefully pushing down a lot of countries' throats. Let's put it, the things very blunt. This is what the European Union is at least saying. What's your take on this whole conflict that has now entered its 1097th day? 3 years have passed. Some kind of hope, but a lot of question marks. Where do you see all of this going?
Well, as far as your comment about the conflict escalating, in a sense, all these drone attacks and all that, because I think it is imminent that peace is eventually going to come and the most powerful parties are moving towards peace. Whenever you go into negotiations, you want to come there from a position of strength. So I think these attacks and putting pressure on each other is part of that. Now, coming to the conflict itself, very few people are addressing the so-called elephant in the room. You talk about peace and you talk about things like reparations and reconstruction and then all kinds of conditions that you hear about.
And how many billions of dollars are going to be spent on
yes, and there's actually a debate on how much has the United States spent on the Ukraine war. According to President Trump, it's close to $300 billion. According to President Zelensky, it's more like $100 billion. Now, if you go back and remember the time when somebody said the Pentagon has $2 trillion missing and the Pentagon has never really passed an audit, it is quite possible that one is not sure of how much money has been sent to Ukraine.
True.
But that's another issue. The bottom line is, if President Trump has decided that there will be peace one way or the other, then there will be peace. Everybody else in Europe, for example, you will hear all kinds of rhetoric. They are definitely concerned. They are concerned because in some ways they feel vulnerable now.
Will they eat humble pie?
Well, at the end of the day they will, but somebody hopefully will give them some kind of face saving.
All right.
But the bottom line is that eventually whatever kind of peace will come to Ukraine, and
right.
I'm glad about
Sooner
that.
than later.
I'm glad about, yes. However, when I talk about the elephant in the room, the reason you are having this war is basically Russia had drawn a red line that if Ukraine were to join NATO, that would be something we will never tolerate. Okay? Then there are other issues that affect it. For example, there's a large population of ethnic Russians that live in the eastern part of Ukraine, and that has its own dynamics. But going back to 1990, when the Soviet Union was being dismantled, James Baker, the Secretary of State of the United States, had said that to Mr. Gorbachev that we will not move an inch eastwards with NATO. Now this was denied at one stage by the Americans. Specifically, I remember Victoria Nuland also said that this was not true. But since then, some of the documents from the National Security Agency that have been declassified show that in fact it was. Now from 1990, this promise was very much broken in 1994 when Mr. Bill Clinton said that we will expand NATO eastwards as much as we like, and no third country will be allowed to veto this. The other interesting part is that in 2000, when Mr. Putin came into power, he actually even suggested Russia joining NATO. So as far as Russia is concerned, and the fact that Russia is trying, I mean, people are trying to portray it as a hegemon and a major threat to Europe itself. You see, not only was Russia at one time keen to finish off basically the purpose of NATO by joining NATO themselves, but you know, Russia is a population of 150 million people, and it's a depleting and aging population. Their economy is the size of the economy of Spain or Italy, and they rely far too much on energy exports. So try to think of the rationale of some country like this trying to destroy itself by expanding into Europe. It just doesn't make sense. So somebody is building this narrative for a specific reason.
All right.
You see?
All right. Narrative building for a specific reason. Shazia, what could that reason be in your point of view now that we've seen the results of two resolutions in the United Nations Security Council and the United Nations General Assembly, one that has gone against the US point of view and one that has favored the US and Russian point of view? Your take.
The reason for the narrative is like centuries old, almost 2 centuries old Russophobia. Generated by the Western Empire, at that time British Empire, then that empire, Western Empire, for us transformed into US Western Empire. So that's the reason for this narrative, and it is very prevalent. By being in Europe, you can feel it, you can see it. It is very much part and parcel of everybody's life to be afraid of Russia in one way or other. Ukraine has become the victim of this Russophobia, and Ukraine is a tragedy right now. If we look at this conflict, it should not have happened. One thing I agree with Trump is that this conflict should not have happened if the Istanbul Agreement would have been respected or agreed upon. But as Europeans till today do not want to stop this war, and that is the division between US and Europeans right now they are fighting about, because the regime in US has changed with the new agenda. They want to cease the fire on the contact, direct line of contact, which is right now being fought for. And European wants to continue this war mainly because of the narrative, because they are victim of their own narrative, and they cannot now double down from saying that Russia is an aggressor and we want to give a strategic defeat to Russia, and now we are going to sit on a negotiation table and we are accepting all terms which of course Russia is offering, and Russia is in position to dictate the terms. So,
all right. So that's it. That's an interesting take that you've given. But I'd move forward as far as Russia is concerned. And Nasir Saab, the Kremlin welcomes a shift in Washington's stance on the war in Ukraine after the vote in the United Nations Security Council. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov in media talk says the following. I'll just give you some pointers and I'd like your take on this. It says Moscow sees potential for cooperation with the US on developing Russia's large reserves of important rare and rare earth minerals. I'm, subtitling earth minerals. All right. Secondly, it says Russia still needs time and a serious journey to trust the US and rebuild ties with the country. Deployment of European peacekeepers in Ukraine would be a move that would be unacceptable to Moscow. We see the US has taken a much more balanced position, which really helps efforts at resolving the conflict in Ukraine. How do you view these statements? There's this reference to the minerals that again comes to Ukraine and what the little tiff between Zelensky and Trump as far as the access, 50% access to the deposits of minerals in Ukraine is concerned. Secondly, it says it deems the peacekeeping forces by Europeans unacceptable as a consequence of any deal that could happen. Will there be a middle way? Because it seems as if the European Union is hell-bent on having some kind of a certain number of forces within Ukraine once this conflict ends.
You see, the important thing is, as far as the peacekeepers are concerned, I think in the near future, Russians will have to accept some form of monitoring of the peace. So whether it is peacekeepers from armed forces in Europe, which can be a little more sensitive because those peacekeepers are also involved in NATO. And if
remember, Switzerland has said that we can give around 200 peacekeeping peacekeepers.
But according to Mr. Zelensky, you require about 110,000. And if you calculate 5 or 6 countries that can possibly contribute, countries like Britain, for instance, could barely contribute between 5 to 10,000, and all told you could probably get about 30,000 troops. But I'm talking about my personal opinion. If there is an issue on this, then I would rather have troops from other countries. Like Pakistan has been very active. As
part of the UN peacekeeping force.
Exactly. And there are many other countries in Asia that can be a part of it, because that would give less of a chance of a conflagration, of a misunderstanding. But eventually, you can't have a peace in a war that has been going on for 3 years without anybody there to monitor it, because very soon you'll start blaming each other and the conflict might blow up once again. Apart from that, as far as the minerals, etc., these wealths are concerned, you see, President Trump is a businessman. And he looks at a lot of these things in a very transactional manner. And sometimes they are not very practical. But at the same time, you cannot simply dismiss this sort of suggestion, because there's always a method to this. There's always a study, there's a group of economists that advise him, and there is a hidden agenda behind it. The other stumbling block will be that as far as Ukraine is concerned, most of the resources are in the ground. So you need major investments. It's not as if Ukraine has an active mineral export that they will give you a share out of that. It's like known reserves which have to have a very heavy investment. So who's going to make that investment, and then how are you going to share it? Because President Trump has not only suggested the mineral and rare earth resources, but he's also said we might take some ports and some airports and things like that. Now, these are all things that, there may be a lot of disagreement over, but at the end of the day, they are the big brother, they are the bully on the block. And I think one way or the other, people will have to give in. But remember, this is where he comes to negotiate from. He comes from a position which to some people might look very unreasonable. But you see, it puts you on the defensive, and then you start bargaining and give a little in exchange.
All right. Shazia, the French President Emmanuel Macron, who is supposed to be a friend of Donald Trump because they were extremely friendly in his first term, met him, and there was a media talk between of the both of them, in which Macron says Trump has good reason to re-engage with Russia's Putin, but adds it was critical for Washington to offer backup for any European peacekeeping force. He says, and I quote, "The peace must allow for Ukrainian sovereignty and allow Ukraine to negotiate with other stakeholders." He also, stopped Donald Trump midway when Trump was claiming that Europe was simply loaning Ukraine money for its war effort, expecting it to be repaid. And he said, and I quote, "In fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total effort, and it was like the US loans, guarantees, and grants." Meetings such as these in the current context, and of course the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is also going to meet with Donald Trump in the coming days. What do you make of it? Is there going to be some kind of a reconciliation between the EU and the US as far as the future of this conflict is concerned?
See, we have to look at the realistic ground picture. The picture on the ground is that the former neoconservatives, neoliberals are gone in America, and a new setup and a new framework is implemented there, which is not aligned with the current European governments. Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer, to my understanding, they are trying to persuade US not to be so blunt about isolating them. After all, it is a matter of face keeping for them. So do not show that split so out in open that it become like embarrassing for broader West, for the term broader West, for people like us who are living in global South. So I think that is the basic agenda for both the premiers. So far, this loan and grant thing is concerned, and as Mr. Ambassador has explained it in his comment, that Trump is a very transactional person. So he wants a foreclosure to this deal. He does not want a peace. He wants a foreclosure. It's a business deal for him. But for Biden, it was an investment to give strategic defeat to Russia. So Trump wants something in return. So Trump does not want that grant which Biden gave to Ukraine as a grant, which Zelensky in his recent press briefing said that we have not received any loan from US, so we are not abide by to pay it back. We received a grant, and 90% of that I am not even accountable for, because we have not even received it. So it is gone, vanished somewhere in the middle. So Macron just cut Mr. Trump right there that no, we didn't give the loan to Ukraine. It was a grant, but we have a collateral in our possession as Russian assets, which we have frozen. So if US somehow keep this possession in the deal, and we can acquire it and then legally use it, then will be a very super thing. It will be super according to him. But otherwise, we have not given any loan to Ukraine. Apart from, beside that, Trump says that
things were basically made clear, Shazia, as far as the French side is concerned, and that again gives rise to a lot of other question marks and angles to how this all is going to move forward. Shazia, thank you very much to have joined us. We're a bit short of time, or else I would have loved to discuss more with you. Shazia Anwer, Cheema, ladies and gentlemen, foreign affairs expert, joining us online. Sir, Nasir Saab, Vladimir Putin says Russia was not opposed to Europe's involvement in peace talks. However, he notes that Brussels had previously declined to engage in dialogue with Russia. Then we have the United Kingdom that has recently imposed around 67 sanctions on Russia and Russians and Russian organizations. Can there be some kind of a ceasefire, I mean, I have to use that word, between the European Union and Russia in order to move forward, in order to look for some tangible solution to this conflict?
You see, as far as sanctions are concerned, Russia is already sanctioned to the hilt, and it hasn't made a great deal of difference. Neither the ruble has crashed as people were expecting it to, nor has Russian exports stopped. And by the way, I must mention that one of the strategic allies of the United States, India, has been importing crude oil from Russia at a huge discount, refining it in India and selling it to Europe. So Europe knows where that oil is coming from. And therefore, I think that it's a bit hypocritical to say that, you know, we'll impose sanctions, we'll do this, we'll do that. That's a political statement as far as that is concerned. Now, the other part of your question was Russians, the economy of Russia, you're talking about how that would impact that.
Yes.
Because you see, it's a very, very dangerous trend. When the war started, Russian reserves were something over $600 billion. Out of that, I would say, as far as the cash reserves were concerned, about 70% were held in banks in Europe and in the United States. So these were, in essence, confiscated. And the only reserves that they had was the gold that was worth about $150 billion, was solid gold reserves, which they managed to leverage to keep the economy going.
All right. So I mean, what I want to understand, I mean, and I'm really cutting you short because we're short of time as well, is that Russia's economy can somehow sustain these sanctions, but the huge question mark is how to move forward in this whole situation.
I'm not trying to say that Russian economy is so strong that it can sustain all kinds of pressure. All I'm trying to say is it's a symbiotic relationship between Europe and Russia. The fact that the Nord Stream 2 was blown up was a major blow to industrial heartland of countries like
something
Germany.
That was accepted by Ukraine.
So they live off each other essentially.
All right.
All other plans are well into the future.
All right. Nasir Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Very, very short of time. So kindly stay with us for about 1 minute while we end this program. A gold toilet worth £4.8 million was stolen within 5 minutes times in 2019, was never found. 4 people were arrested. 1 has confessed. The other 3 have said that they were not part of this conspiracy. But there are a lot of proofs that are proving that point towards all of these people that were involved in this heist. And of course, this toilet, this gold toilet that you see, was broken into many pieces and the gold was hereby sold. Lastly, musicians across the United Kingdom have released a silent album to protest the United Kingdom's AI copyright changes. More than 1,000 musicians, including Kate Bush, Cat Stevens, today released a silent album to protest the proposed changes to Britain's copyright laws that could allow tech firms to train artificial intelligence models using their work and hence emulate the voices and the sounds. And this is what they are all against. AI, I think, also on a personal note, needs to be used within certain limits and not exceed limits that could be detrimental to many people. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories, segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.